Hello and welcome to CTOs at Work podcast series. In this podcast series, we talk to chief technology officers, engineering head, product and technology leaders from all around the world and learn from them how they work, how they build and manage world-class technologies and products, how they hire great talent and many more things. I'm your host, Love Chopra, and in today's podcast, I feel really honored to introduce you to our guest who is known for his thought leadership around big data and open source technologies, and he is Vineet Tyagi. Vineet has been into the IT industry from last 20 plus years, and currently he is playing his role as Chief Technology Officer at Impetus. Impetus is a software solution product and services company. It has more than 1600 employees globally. Impetus is focused on creating new ways of analyzing data. It has expertise across big data ecosystem including Hadoop, NoSQL, NewSQL, MPP databases, machine learning and innovative visualization. It has also listed in India's top 100 best companies to work for from last 4 years in a row. Vineet is expert in technology forecasting and building a strategic technology plan. Vineet has managed technology and product development investments as large as 6 million a year and have directly led the creation and implementation of new business line as large as 50 million a year in the space of big data and digital transformation. Vineet has managed the whole life cycle of innovation from ideation to implementation to commercialization. He built and managed product team of more than 120 plus people working in a cutting edge technologies. Vineet is a regular speaker on big data, cloud computing, agile in various industry conferences, webinar, NESCOM and various other events. Vineet has done his MS in consultancy management from BITS Pilani and BE Computer Science from NSIT. So with that note, I would like to welcome Vineet. So welcome Vineet, it's a great privilege to have you on the show.
Thank you, Love. I'm also excited to be on your show and looking forward to speaking with your listeners.
Thanks Vineet, I am also very excited to talk to you on technology, product and big data and a lot of other stuffs. So Vineet, could you please tell us about your career journey so far, how you climbed your career ladder and reached to this stage and become the CTO of Impetus?
Yeah, it's been a really long journey, 20 plus years now, Love. And in some sense, I'm also a dinosaur in the technology world. So really, it was my passion for technology. I saw a computer in my school in the early 90s. And that's when I got fascinated by technology and specifically computer engineering. And I decided to pursue a career in something that was my passion. Since then, I've done all kind of roles. I began my career journey as a software developer, solving some cutting edge problems of that time in computer telephony integration space. I have had the good fortune to then progress and work as technical architect in a variety of situations with variety of customer problem domains from healthcare, transportation, insurance, etc. And all through my career journey, one thing that I realized was that my passion for technology was the differentiation I can create. I stayed true to that. And increasingly, I have learned, how to marry business problems, technology, and really use technology for solving business problems and creating a bigger value impact for that. So 12 years ago, I joined Impetus, and in that time frame, I have worked with a variety of different problems. And in 2014, I took on the role of the CTO for Impetus. And today I look after the technology strategy for the organization, manage the product portfolio, as well as work with our customers to make sure that we stay ahead of the technology curve and we are relevant for our customers.
Great. That was a very interesting journey, like how you started from computer telephony space to technical architect, work on various domains, healthcare, insurance. It was fascinating to listen your whole story. So, what was your first company, Vineet? How you started just after graduating from your computer science from NSIT?
Right. So when I graduated out of my engineering in 1995, I had got an offer from a company which I believe doesn't exist today called ANS Softwares. I
Okay.
interned there for only a few months, and then I moved on to a company that I really started my career with, which probably also doesn't exist today, but used to be
Okay.
called Information Technologies India Limited. And at that point in time, they were running an outsourced project for computer telephony integration for Samsung. And that's what I really began. And you learned a lot about, solving critical problems with technology, etc. So it was a interesting, experience, especially coming out of the college, looking at how technology is being used to create something that is useful for business.
All right. And I also saw on your profile like you have done MS. So, so at what point of time in your career you have decided that okay, now this is the time to go through the MS program?
That's a good question, Love. I have something, as a part of my passion for technology. Learning is also another one of my lifelong passions. And maybe I was a little immature when I passed out of college, or a little too eager to start working. But as I progressed through my career, and I was about 5, 6, 7 years into my career, I realized that technology by itself will not be enough, and you really need to understand the context within which technology is being used, and that context is overall the business situation. And in order for me to really understand that business situation, I had to get some basics of how businesses run, what is the motivation for decision making, etc. And this MS was a unique program that was equipping, or helped me equip myself to understand the dynamics of how business runs, and as a technology consultant, how can I use my skills to contribute to an enterprise.
Right, interesting. Yes, you're absolutely right. Like technology by itself is not enough. Basically, we have to understand what is the real application of this technology could be. Absolutely. And Vineet, we have one thing in common. Like you have also worked in CSC, and earlier I also worked in the CSC for around 4 years. I worked there in an innovation group of Riskmaster team, and Riskmaster is the world's biggest widely used self-insurance product.
It is great to know that that we share a common. I think it was a great company to work for.
Absolutely. So Vineet, as you work with various companies in different roles, and currently you playing your role as CTO at Impetus. So before that, you might have also worked under various CTOs or engineering heads. So according to you, like what should be the ideal role of a CTO in any company, or how you think that it grows according to the stages or sizes of the company?
That's a good question, Love. And when I was taking on the CTO role myself, I was grappling with the same question. And one of the things that dawned on me was that as I was seeking more clarity around that, I realized that roles of CTO in a services company and in a products company are different, and so are the expectations. That's something that really became clear to me. That clarity also created a little bit of anxiety for me, because at Impetus we do both. So I was going to be two in a box. I was going to do two roles, or the expectations would be double. At different points in time, depending on what is needed, the role in a product company CTO is more of an external facing technologies, a visionary, somebody who can really lead the operations hands-on, and get products delivered and out to the market, versus somebody who's a CTO for a services company needs to be a little more big thinker and more of a business change manager through influence. So that's what I really also learned, and that's what I also have been practicing. That at Impetus, in my role and what I'd seen and learned from other heads of engineering and people that I can consider to be my mentor, I really got this clarity that if you are really looking to be a great CTO, specifically in a product setup, you have to develop as an external facing technology, somebody people can look up to, somebody people can relate to, and also be visionary in managing the product operations per se. So that's what I focused on, and also being a big thinker and really leading by influence, trying to influence a lot of change that goes on in large organizations, service organizations, where you may not be able to directly administratively control or command people to do something. But that itself is another challenge that I relish and I've learned.
Right. Like Vineet, you just mentioned that a CTO role varies from like service companies. It has a different role, different set of expectation. In product company, it has a different role, different set of expectation. Like in service company, it could be, in product company, it could be like an external facing technologist. In services, it could be big thinker or a business change manager. Like you play currently a role which have both the personalities. So could you please talk more on that, like how you manage this kind of a split personality role to play as a service CTO also and to play as a product CTO also?
It helps that I have a split personality disorder. Of course, I'm kidding. I don't have that. But yeah, I think one of the things that fundamentally has helped me is that I have worked in before I became a CTO, I had worked in both kind of setups. I had worked in pure services company, SI companies. I had a fairly large stint in a company called Keen, which has been acquired and now is called NTT Data.
Okay.
I had also worked in a company that both you and I share our history with, CSC, where I was doing product development on the healthcare insurance side. And then in the last 12 years, I've got the opportunity at Impetus also before becoming CTO to really work on product development as well as services. So having got both these backgrounds, I really could understand and relate to the differences. That's one. Once I did that, I had mapped out, sat down, and I keep doing that year to year, what is needed for our business, what is needed to be successful, plan out what customers are critical on the services side, how would I work with them, what kind of big thinking is needed. As a part of the influencing the general population, the employee base, and sharing ideas with them, I run a few programs that I had created. So every quarter, all our employees, I make an open connect with them. I address them. I share something that is happening, in the organization, in our customer base, or in the technology world in general, that might be useful. That's something, a message that I want to make sure that everybody takes home, or at least gets tickled about, so that they can start thinking about that perspective. Sometimes I create the message which is more provocative and talk about, hey, what's going to be the future of digital transformation. So that has helped me as well. And on the product side, things are more certain and more defined. We have our objectives to meet. We have our roadmap to be achieved. We know where the customers need certain things. We know where our product is headed. So I wouldn't say it's an easy job, but I kind of split myself depending on what has to be created and achieved during the year, what kind of customers we have to work with, and what kind of roadmap we have to achieve. So based on that, I think I do plan out ahead of time and make sure that I'm doing justice to both these roles.
That is really fantastic. Great to hear that. So Vineet, you joined Impetus 12 years ago. So I believe at that point of time, Impetus was also in the mode of a startup, or so at that point of time, and then the big data and digital transformation, all these technologies are then came into picture. So how was that time? It was like more of a startup culture that point of time, or how was that?
Sure. Yeah, when I joined Impetus, we were a smaller company, I would say. We were not as big as we are today, 1700 people plus. And we didn't have the kind of the geographical spread that we have today, and the product spread and the service spread. But having said that, my startup movement came a little after I joined. So if I may take a few quick minutes to share that, around about 2009, 2010, we had started looking at how can we grow our organization and what are the growth areas. And at that point in time, we realized that there is a lot of transformative things happening. Of course, we didn't realize it as a digital transformation that everybody knows it today. But what we realized, there was a lot of social, mobile, data analytics, data kind of things happening. And we realized that enterprises tomorrow would need a different kind of products, and they would also need different kind of services that in order to really manage all of this data. And the analytics needs would be different. So our startup moment was really, we created that kind of startup movement within the larger company in 2009-2010 time frame, where we said, okay, this looks like a growth area for us, but how do we grow this thing? What are we going to do about it? How are we going to really define our product? And that product would be a mix of services and pure software products. And what would we do? How would we sell it? What kind of skill sets and expertise would be needed? How would we communicate that? So really, I think my startup moment within that was in 2009, 2010, where I kind of got the opportunity to spearhead this, lead this initiative, create a thought leadership position, build that expertise, and really scale up, and then transition over to once we establish the practice, transition it over to more customer-facing teams, build new products, etc.
Great. So Vineet, one thing I would like to ask you, like I know a lot of startup guys who are into the product space, building awesome products, but the nature of their product is like it could have a mix of services as well as a product delivery directly to the consumer. Like there are many startups into education steps, they doing it, but investors or the VC firms advises them that do not take up services part, because if you take up a service part, then you lose your focus from the product consumer part. So what's your advice? And I think the service part is very important to generate the immediate revenue to sustain the company for a long run.
Right. No, I get the question, and it's a conundrum that everybody faces. While what you shared about the VCs sharing is also correct, and what our wisdom has been is also holds value. So let me try to share my thought process around that. It is a sound model to really fund your products through service revenues and the benefits of that. It is also a sound model where there are businesses, and you can build businesses which involve both from scratch as well. However, the thing that is challenging is when you're a startup and you're building something, you're also building out to build a product, and you're out to build a services business. how do you really differentiate between your product and service business? You are out to really, you will be stretched as a startup, right? And there are times when you only have 5 people or 6 people or 7, you're only that much, that's your team. And there is a service opportunity on the table which says that will help me pay the bill for and the salaries for all these 5 people. And that's when you would cut corners and shelve your product plans and switch over to generating that revenue for so that you can pay your bills. I mean, that's why VCs kind of tell you to stay away from that, because the focus tends to get very diluted if you're truly a startup, you're challenged for cash, etc. In a more established company, it's a little different, because if you have a war chest, you already have a services team that can be sustained, or you have the investments that can be made. Then it becomes a tad easier for you to think and kind of have a mixed strategy. While I'm sharing that, it's not impossible that you can build a services and a product startup together from scratch, but it does take a little bit of very focused and disciplined approach to doing that.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for sharing all this. This is a great insight. So what exactly you do as a CTO, or I mean, what's your day-to-day schedule looks like, or hourly schedule looks like at Impetus? Like, I was talking to Shashank Sathe. He is a CTO at Aditya Birla My Universe. So he was sharing me that he starts his day by doing a regular scrum, 3 minutes with each team member. So like, how's what you do as a CTO on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. I wish I had the time to do that. My team is a little more geographically distributed, so we're always challenged to find some common time. But having said that, I don't, the discipline of my schedule is I really begin my day, a little late in the game, because evenings are the overlap time. We are global, so we work a lot with customers, as well as some of my team are in the North American time zone, so evenings offer that overlapping hours where we can work with each other. So, but I use my mornings generally to stay fit, and also to read up interesting tidbits, catch up on some of the things for the day, and plan my day accordingly. Once I get to office, the early part of the morning, the first half of the afternoons I generally spend on anything that's burning critical need, but then also regularly meeting with teams and doing 2-3 things. One is helping create. We are continuously ideating. As a team, we are continuously ideating and examining what next for us, what next big thing, next big idea. We may not immediately build that, but that keeps us and my team continuously challenged and expanding on horizons. I also spend a lot of time inspecting what my teams are doing, being a mentor, reviewing things also as they are happening. I get into a lot of road mapping, solutioning around my product side of the role. So a lot of whiteboarding, brainstorming with my team on features, how we will build them. So that's how I spend most of my day. I do make it a point, I'll catch up one of my people, one of my team members, and catch them in the hallway, or while at the coffee machine or something, and just catch up on what's going on and the latest office gossip.
Interesting. So you also talked about road mapping. So do you use any tool for doing the road mapping, or you believe on more spreadsheet, whiteboard, the actual code thing, or any tools you use for that?
We are getting a little more disciplined to the whole road mapping process. So we do not really use a tool for creating the roadmap. The standard Excel and the PPT is good representation for us. But how we get there is interesting, because we do a lot of whiteboarding, a lot of idea generation, which is a little unstructured in the thinking. But that does involve, we are a geographically distributed team, so we, kind of come together on video conference, spend some time thinking through what needs to be done, what can we be created. We also use a technique which is called future backwards. And what
Okay.
future backward means is that we first try and define what future would be like. Let's say, what would be the enterprise data management needs in 2020 be like, and then think from there, what would our product be, so that we are successful in that business environment in 2020. So it's kind of like you project the future and then come back from there and see what should I be doing now and how would I plan my future, so that when I get there into the future, I am successful.
Okay, that's interesting. So is it kind of reverse engineering process?
Yeah, you can say that we first create a future and reverse engineer as to how we will be successful in creating the future, or really
All right.
getting there.
So these kind of session must be very fun oriented session also. You must have imagined a lot of things and then roll back, move to the place from where you need to start.
It is fun, but it is also counterintuitive. Most of us are not tuned to think like that. So the first couple of times I brought in new team members into this, and first time I got exposed to this way of thinking also, it does take a little bit of it's confusing for a moment, right? It seems counterintuitive, but once you get a hang of it, you're right, it is very interesting, it's very invigorating, it's very empowering once you really think through, this is the future I'm going to create. Because you know what, people generally think future is not in their hands, right? So getting to define a future and working to create that is always exciting. Additionally, I'm also a firm believer of the Elon Musk popularized that first principle thinking. So really breaking down a problem into his very atomic problem domain and looking at it, how to solve that simplistically, also is a technique that we use.
Okay.
At least I personally use that.
All right. Could you please share more on Elon Musk technique? I'm sure it would be really very interesting for the audience to understand that.
Sure. So the first principles or thought process that Elon Musk has been propagating, and if you Google around for it, for your listeners, if you just Google on first principles, you'll find a ton of reading material out there to give you some kind of a background. But I'll just do a very quick 2-minute, my version of what this means to me.
Sure.
So from what I recall, I think Elon Musk didn't create this. It has been around forever. I think Aristotle or somebody, some thinker had created this. And the first principle basically in this methodology applies to the first basis from which a thing is known. Kind of really go down when you have a large problem to really going down to simplify it down to what should be this thing known about, right? So it does take a lot of mental taxing energy to really look at things from a different perspective. If you have to put the man on the Mars, there is a lot of current thinking that will establish it, and that's a current context that will also corrupt it in a way. But let's say you have to put the man on the moon, then what will be the first basis from which we started? How will we get there? What is it that will make it possible? And really breaking down thinking to that level, and then thinking how to make it possible. It does kind of keep challenging you, keep trying to find new ways of doing it.
Interesting. Interesting. And I think these methodology you used, like future backward and first principle, I think this methodology also very helpful to motivate your teams to be aligned onto the what we actually trying to achieve or what we trying to build. Because you know what happened, I heard that in a lot of like services company, the guys who working on to the like to deliver that service or to deliver that product as per the customized requirement, they actually don't know the actual uses of how it will be used. Like I find it a problem with many services company, and I think if you have these kind of processes, your team member will automatically know that what would be the future look like.
That's correct. So it is exciting. I think if there are people who are open to this, it is mentally taxing also, because you have to really unlearn a lot of things, and you know, the more experienced we tend to get, the more complicated our thought process becomes. So really, if you look at kids, right? If you look at small children, I think they are expert in first principles thinking, because they think of problems at a very fundamental level into very simplistic steps. They don't think from very complicated solution perspectives. So really, you know, that childlike curiosity, having that childlike innocence, and not having the wisdom that is sometimes called experience, that requires a lot of unlearning. But if you can train yourself to give that up, start thinking like children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Unlearning is, I think, the very important part, and absolutely in these days, like technology is moving at such a fast pace. So at that point in time, you have to learn you have to unlearn a lot of things to learn new things.
Right, absolutely.
So Vineet, you know, while building products, we do many such things on which we feel really proud about. And like you worked in multiple products and multiple services. So like what was your aha moment, or something like you feel that yes, I have done it?
I've had my share of aha moments, and I also celebrate every small big achievement that I am personally involved in and my team is involved in as an aha moment. So I really difficult to find out and say that was one of my aha moments. But every success that we've had, be it from taking Impetus from one of the many to now being one of the few, that's one of my big latest aha moment. Every time I learn about a new technology, that's my aha moment for the day. Every time I see my team succeed and do a new release, that's my aha moment as well. Every time we sign up a new customer, that is a aha moment for us to celebrate that win as well. And I think my biggest aha moment is that you know, we are currently out on a path to revolutionize how organizations manage and use data. Once we do that, that will be my biggest aha moment.
Wow, interesting. I think that's the very good learning here. Like you said, aha moment for the day. So I mean, everybody should celebrate their aha moment, and they should capture like, what's my today aha moment like?
Exactly. Yeah. I think these are small motivations that keep you you know, focused and satisfied. Why wait for that one big thing when I will be satisfied? So why not create these small satisfactions every day? And that's the aha moment for the day, the week. It could be for the month, and could be one for the lifetime as well.
Absolutely. It will give the new motivation and inspiration to go forward and break the barrier of the monotonous.
Right.
So we need like, as Impetus worked with various clients that have different need, and they might have altogether different use cases around big data itself. So could you please share any one of the example of your product use case? I mean, what was the customer problem like, and how your product or services solve that problem using big data or related technologies?
Right. So I would represent the work that one of our services team has done in the data science world. And like I said, that 1,700 people. That's all my organization. Everybody, although administratively could be organized differently, but I celebrate all these wins, right? So
Right.
some of the work that our data science team has been doing recently is pretty path breaking. Without naming the customer, I'll share that I'm going into too much of details to give away some elements of the IP. What I can share is that if you look at the oil and natural gas industry, if you look at the moment seismic studies are done and let's say oil is discovered or gas is discovered, to the moment oil well or a gas well becomes operational, there is a large many years of work and design that goes into all of this creation. And this is a more this is all digitalized, but still it is a very traditional business. There are digital drawings, etc. There could be a million versions of this, from the first version down to what was implemented. There could be engineering drawings and many other things which are very different. They were conceptualized something, and eventually what got built was something. So there is always this challenge of knowledge management, that while this oil and natural gas company that we were working with possesses all these drawings, they don't know why the piping diameter was changed from 4 to 6 inches, or what led to that change in the eventual design. And that is an important element, because if there is something in that can be replicated in the next well that will be dug up, and next well that will oil rig that will start producing oil, then you can learn from that and kind of institutionalize that across the organization. Unfortunately, this company was not able to do that, because there are millions of versions of these drawings and nobody knows why certain changes were making. So using deep learning and machine learning to determine what changes were and what possible reasons of those changes could be, was a potential breakthrough that our data science team has created. And several of these use cases, which sound futuristic, our data science team has been working on and solving now. For a railroad company, trying to optimize or look at what are the signs, railroad signs, and trying to prevent accidents from happening. To create a system that takes care of driver fatigue. Sometimes drivers you're traveling at 60 kilometers per hour. Maybe there was a sign to, kind of slow down, but there was a branch that was grown, or a tree that had a branch hanging in front of it, and you miss that. You didn't slow down. That can cause an accident. So having some kind of computer vision that will help the driver and in assist him in not missing that. That's another kind of use case. So we were doing a lot of things. Our team is doing, our products are doing in managing and working with data. So a lot of stories I can share, love.
Interesting. Thanks a lot for sharing this practical insight. So, like, as you have multiple products and you playing around with multiple futuristic technologies, so what's your general tech stack look like?
So currently we are focused on big data analytics, machine learning. So it's purely to a large degree open source Hadoop driven technology stack. So from the perspective of the Hadoop and its friends technology stack, there would be all these technologies. Hadoop will be there, HDFS, Hive, Spark, Elasticsearch. We would have Flink. So I could go on naming several of these technologies which are there. I think the critical thing for us is that we do not try to pick up a favorite technology stack, rather than focus on knowing as much as there is to be known about what is happening generally in the technology world. Having the experience to deal with it, and then using the right technologies to create the right technical stack to solve a given problem.
Right, interesting. So Vineet, do you still code?
Not officially. And if I acknowledge on your show today, then a lot of my team members might get ideas, or some of my program managers might sign me up as another contributor on our program. So officially I don't. I mostly review and review design and contribute to that. But I teach my sons coding, and in my spare time I try to learn and have my personal projects going on.
Okay, interesting. Interesting. So somehow you still are in touch of coding, not directly but indirectly in some other ways.
Yeah, my job doesn't give me time, and neither is it required right now. But like I said, I have passion for technology, and I can't give up coding ever. I think I'll still be coding when I'm 80 or 70 or whatever.
Interesting. And Vineet, could you please share, if somebody wants to learn about big data technologies, then how he or she should go about it? I saw like a lot of people working in services companies for like 10 years, 12 years or 5 years, or some like they just passed out from college. They want to get into the big data, and when they actually come online to learn, they got like scattered because there are a lot of information available, there are a lot of courses available, some teaching you something else, some teaching you something else. So what should be the right way?
Yeah, that's a good, and I can share my experience and my methodology. So if you look at big data, right? Big data is all about solving problems with data. Right. So there's an element of problem solving in it. There is an element of certain statistical thinking, and there is also an element of having expertise with programming tools, right?
Right.
I think most of the people just focus on learning programming with certain programming tools, which is a good foundation, but it's only 1/3 of the picture. So, if you look at, you want to pick up, handling big data, you could pick up Python, or you could pick up Hive skill sets, or you could do MapReduce programming. And now Spark and Scala are becoming, prevalent as well. So you can learn those as a programming tool as well. But that's not by itself enough. What is also important is to really understand the context of problem solving. How do you solve problems around data using those technologies? And that comes from certain level of experience, certain level of doing things, certain level of inquisitiveness. You could go to platforms like Kaggle.com, and there are open data competitions which are there. And I know people who have really become experts because they focused on learning the programming skills. Then they, started solving the problems, and for that they went to these online, platforms like Kaggle, and several other competitors are there that gave them the experience. Because being in a services company or being in by yourself, you would not have the opportunity to, or the reach to work with data. So these platforms allow you to get that reach and practice your skills. And once you do that, that's when truly your learning gets sharpened, and it becomes relevant.
Right. So basically, if somebody wants to get into the big data, so they need to have a problem solving attitude to how they can solve the problem with the basis of data, how they can relate the meaning, how can grasp the meaning out of those data, and they should have some kind of programming skills and understanding of technology that have. So it's a combination of 3-4 different areas. So if you combine together, then you can actually get into the big data industry.
Yeah, you can get into that, and you will be successful also. And if somebody is asking me, okay, I got that, that's a good framework, how actually I would do this, I would suggest that there is a lot of open courses nowadays, right? So it's you could go to the Coursera or edX or Udacity or several of these kind of open learning courses which are there, which are very very effective. can learn
Right.
at your own pace. So you could focus on learning about the technologies and developing those skills. And once you have reached a good comfort level with that, then I recommend that people should go to kaggle.com or seek out any other platform like that, where or participate in hackathons that will give them real life skills and real life learning as well.
Right, right. Interesting, interesting. And Vineet, I was reading one of your article on CIO review. It's about getting fast ROI with your big data projects. So could you please tell something about like how your customers, clients can get a fast ROI with big data projects?
Yeah. So I can relate some of the things. It's a long conversation, love, but I'll
Right.
just do a 2 minute version of that. So
Sure.
basically, what I had shared in that article was that a framework around um, what are the challenges with big data, what are some of the things that people expect from big data,
Right.
and Hadoop is the poster child for big data. So a lot of organizations and enterprise start their big data journey by establishing a Hadoop cluster and then start capturing data put it into that cluster. They'll expand that cluster, but then very soon the cluster will have a lot of data, and maybe they're doing some business use cases on top of that. But then it
Right.
becomes a question of we are spending $1 million on all this new skills and new hardware and new
Mm,
data ingestion mechanisms. But what are we really getting out of this? What is the problems we are solving? What is the ROI for something like this? And that's
right.
where people start struggling as to how to prove that ROI, because there is a lot of things. It's a catch 22. The more data you'll put there, the newer kind of ideas that could come in. So what that article in that article I put forward the fact that Hadoop is also a place where you can utilize it for offloading some of your existing enterprise data warehouses. And one of the products that we have created is actually a product that can take an existing investment. Let's, for example, say the current organization or enterprises have lot invested on, let's say, Teradata. So I can
Mm,
take whatever data and whatever workloads, which is BTEC scripts and SQL and other things that I've created over the last few years, and I can automatically migrate them over to big data. Now, if I were to do that using people, that may be a $10 million investment in a 2 year program. But with the tool set that we've created, it's you press a button and that happens.
okay,
So
interesting.
that creates a very extreme proposition for increasing the ROI, because you can now suddenly move from a very costly platform to a very open source commodity platform that will help you save a lot of money.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and thanks for sharing the crux of that article, the main insight of that article. So, Vineet, I have one question. Like you have 1,700 plus people in your team. So,
Mhm.
like how you manage this huge team?
Mm.
To use some tools, some processes?
Not it helps. I mean, not all of them report to me, and they're not part of my
Yeah,
the CTO's organization. That's the Impetus team, which is there.
yeah,
So
right.
obviously, there's other of my peers and head of engineering and other people who manage a lot more of that number of people. But my
Hmm.
team size is also significant. And to answer your question, we do use a lot of internal tool. We've recently shifted to Microsoft Office 365 on the cloud. So there is
Okay.
a lot of inbuilt team management. There is a Microsoft Office Teams infrastructure which we've got. So we try to keep the communication and collaboration going, knowledge management going. In terms of my own team, how do I structure and manage this? I think I have created a very small hierarchy. It's not a very deep hierarchy that exists
Hmm.
in our organization also. And
Okay.
typically, what we do is that we empower people. We focus on making sure that our people are being mentored, trained, and empowered to do their job. That's the most important thing that we focus on. And if we really focus on developing people, giving them the freedom, I've seen a lot of people perform their best, and I have a really long career. At Impetus today, I think our average longevity is very high. We have approximately one half the industry attrition. Last year, I think 150 or 160 people completed 5 years or more at Impetus. There are many people, 100 or more people who have completed 10 years and plus. There are another 50 people who have done 15 years or more. So I think that's the kind of culture and things we're building.
Awesome. So how many people report to you, and what's their composition look like? They are like VB engineering, they are developers. So what it look like?
So my team is, like I said, is significantly not a very deep hierarchy. So I have senior directors, reporting into me, who in turn have architects and other senior software developers, leads reporting into them. So that's the bands we look at. So senior software developers, lead developers, they are pretty much one band. Then we have the architects, senior architects being another band. Then there are directors, and then we typically have people like me. So I have my direct reports are typically directors or senior directors, and they individually lead certain critical area. For example, I have a director who leads my R&D group. There is a director who leads the pre-sale solutions, so on and so forth.
All right, interesting. And what's your hiring strategy? Like how you hire people who can report to you?
So I am continuously looking for people who are passionate for technology, who are self-motivated and self-learners. So that's the three critical things that we look for. And our hiring strategy is to find these people either through referrals or through industry connects, or through we also believe in at the at the people who do the work level. We also believe in taking fresh people in interns and really growing them within the organization. So we actively look for and hire from straight out of college. I have several people in my team, many tens of people who had joined as straight out of the college and have now risen to become developers. From they were developers, then they became architects and senior architects now.
All right, interesting. So you give preference to people from like tier 1 colleges, or you give more focus towards on their skills and they are self-motivated or self-learner?
While we do acknowledge that tier 1, tier 2 colleges typically have a higher IQ type people, because it's equally difficult to get into them, but there can be a number of reasons why people have not got through. So I give an equal opportunity to people. Whoever can ace our test and get in has a right to get into our organization. So we really don't discriminate it that much.
All right, interesting. So Vineet, I would like to actually discuss a lot of things with you. I have a lot of actually questions and I'm very curious to know all those things, but for the respect of the time, I would like to ask a final question to you, and then we will wrap up today's session.
Sure.
So finally, I would like to ask, what's your personal perspective that what are the vital skills you think are required to succeed as a CTO?
I can share from what traits I think I've seen some of the successful CTOs, VP of engineering, and from my experience as well. There are 3 or 4 things which are very critical. Having a passion for technology. If you're not passionate about technology, taking on a CTO role is going to be counterproductive. It's saying that you are going to be the prime minister of the company when you're not interested in running the country. That's a very important perspective, and I think that has to be an ingrained perspective. With passion, there is a lot of learning, self-learning, being a big thinker, and a visionary that comes in as well. I think there are enrollment and alignment skills which are needed, being able to communicate your idea and get people to really understand that, and also enroll them into something. So that's another critical skill I see that good successful CTOs should have. Third thing I also say is that if you are, it can sound negative, but I'll say it the way it is. Got to have an opinion. If you're not opinionated, then you can't take a stand. If you're hyper flexible with everything, then not necessarily that you'll be a big thinker or a big CTO. So having an opinion is good. Taking a stand, expressing that is also very important to succeed as a CTO. So these are some of the things I can share based on my experience.
Right, and I really like all of these your thoughts on what are the skills are required to be a successful CTO, and I really like this communicating your idea into the right way. I think this is the most important skills which techies actually lack. Whether they are a software developer or they are at architect position, they lack the way how they communicate their ideas to their seniors, to outside world. So communication of the idea, I think, is the most important skills. And thanks for sharing that.
Right, love.
All right. So thank you so much for sharing such a great insight, Vineet. It's really a great honor to have you on our show. And I'm sure whoever is listening to this podcast must have learned some great lessons out of it. And if you guys have any question for Vineet, please feel free to write into the comment section and we will definitely get back to you. Thank you so much for being with us. Stay tuned for the next podcast. Goodbye and see you soon.